Hey folks, it's Trini here, executive and leadership coach for women in senior leadership positions, and specifically for women who work for mission-driven organizations and companies who are dealing with leadership depletion and exhaustion and possibly on the brink of burnout. But these leaders are looking for ways to work and have impact in a way that's sustainable long term. So if that sounds like you, you're in the right place, and I'm glad you're here. And today we're talking about energy draining relationships and how that causes burnout at work. Now, when you think of burnout, or just energy depletion and exhaustion, a lot of it for the clients that I work with and people that I work with, a common source is work, whether that's too much work, you can't say no, there's too many things on your plate, and it really adds up after a while. But one thing that's important to think about are the relationships that drain your energy and drain your time in all areas of your life. And this is where social rest becomes really important. So when you're dealing with depletion and exhaustion, rest is key, but there's all different kinds of rest. So we've talked about physical rest and spiritual rest, and today we're talking about social rest. And social rest really requires you to look at the relationships in your life that negatively drain or negatively pull on your energy. And this can be anything from your boss and colleagues and your team to family or your spouse or friends. And so when you're on the brink of burnout and you're dealing with all this overwhelm and exhaustion, a lot of times that is exacerbated by the relationships that you have. And particularly as a woman in leadership, you often lead in other areas of your life. So not just work, but you're often a leader in your family or with your friends. You're the one that people can turn to when it's time to get things done, or they know that you'll pull through if they need support with something. And that can really be extremely draining and extremely tiring. And I can tell you, this is something that I dealt with some years ago. I was probably late 29, 30. And at the time, I had relationships with various people in my life where I felt like I was very supportive and always giving and always showing up for people and doing all those sorts of things that, that's what you do for people you love. And it wasn't until I hit the skids in my own life where, I was going through a really difficult breakup. My mom was diagnosed with cancer for the first time, and I was having a really hard time at work. And it was just all these things that were going on for me. And I realized that the people who I had been, supporting and being in a relationship with weren't there for me in the ways that I needed them to be. And it really hurt at first. I mean, for a while, it was very hurtful. But after a while, it became a wake-up call for me. And I realized, oh, these aren't the relationships that will sustain me. These aren't the relationships that I need. And so I went through a period where I cut a lot of people off. I disconnected. I ended a lot of relationships. And I also reordered the relationships that I wanted to keep. And so that looked like having difficult conversations with people, asking for what I needed and demanding in many ways what I needed. That meant having boundaries. That mean, saying no to things and being okay with people not wanting me to say no. I mean, it was a long time of me going through that, and something really interesting happened. I ended up with relationships of all kinds that felt really clean for me. And by clean, I mean relationships that felt supportive, loving, reciprocal, but also where I felt like I was getting what I needed from them and I was able to pour into them as well. And that felt really good to me. And this can feel counterintuitive for you, particularly if you come from a family or community of origin where you're not used to that. And you're used to, maybe giving so much or to the point of exhaustion where the boundaries are so blurry, or you don't even, the concept of boundaries at all just doesn't make any sense. So this is something that I know a lot of people deal with. And it just makes it so much better when you're able to have that. So social rest is really important. And if you're dealing with overwhelm, the rest that comes from having reciprocal relationships and honestly getting rid of those relationships that don't work is really not only empowering, but it gives you a deep sense of rest where you're not worried 24/7 about what other people are needing from you and pulling on you, where you're turning off your phone and avoiding texts and all of that because you don't want to deal with it. When you can get that off your plate, that's really what social rest does for you. So I encourage you, if this is something that that you're struggling with, if you're dealing with, if you're on the brink of burnout at work, or you're dealing with depletion and exhaustion, this is a good place to take a look to start changing things and start fixing things. So again, and it's not easy to do, but you might need to disconnect and cut off some relationships. Some relationships may need to be reordered. That's the way I like to think of them. Relationships that you need and want to preserve, but the way they stand right now is not the way that you want to continue. And so you're going to have to change some things, and there needs to be some new expectations set from you in terms of what you need and what you're willing to give. Okay, so again, social rest, this is something that is really key. If you are a leader who is feeling overwhelmed and you're like, oh my gosh, this is too much, or you're on the brink of burnout and you need something, give yourself social rest and try some of the things that I talked about in this video. I think you'll find them really helpful. So if this was good for you and good to you, there's a link below this video if you want to take this conversation a little bit further, because I know this kind of work is not easy to do on your own. And so I'd love to connect with you further. But in the meantime, just sit with this video, sit with the content here, share it with a friend who you think might could use this. And that's all for today. Take good care, and I'll talk to you soon.